Hello. Всем добрый вечер. Меня зовут Надя. Я координатор этой площадки Shukhov Lab. Я сделаю небольшое вступление по поводу нашего сегодняшнего мероприятия. Надеюсь, все пришедшие в курсе, что, к сожалению, лекция Сергея Кузнецова отменилась. В ту дверь. Вот в ту дверь теперь. Но у нас сегодня вместо этого будет довольно интересная программа. Мы пригласили присоединиться к нам по скайпу создателей первых фаблабов в разных точках планеты. Из Латинской Америки, из Европы, из Азии, из Северной Америки. И сегодня они все нам расскажут об их видении будущего городов и о том, как технологии меняют города. Но презентации будут на английском языке. Есть у кого-то сложности с английским настолько, что ничего не будет понятно? Я могу переводить просто отдельно кому-то, если нужно, да, вам? Okay. So the presentation will be in English. Today here we have with us students of the Global Summer School of the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. They are joining us also with this program. So I would like to represent Vicente Guayard, who is going today after the part with the global session, Skype session, he will represent our educational and research projects, which we have currently here in Shukhov Lab. First of all, our master program, City and Technologies, Prototyping Future Cities, and the International Students Contest, Cities for a Flying World. So, Vicente, please. Thank you.
Hello. So thank you for coming. As Nadia was saying, we wanted to do today with the open day 2 events. One was inviting Sergei Kuznetsov, the chief architect, and then after that our idea was to present the master program and to discuss about it, but Sergei canceled in the last minute, and then what we did was to organize an event that is this. We have invited several people around the world that are working with us in order to discuss the topic about the construction, the fabrication, and the city of the future. So we will have the first one talking right now, Thomas Ermacora. He is from London. He's somewhere in Europe. I don't know where is him, in fact. He will tell us. And he made the first Fab Lab in London, but he's working on the idea of the reindustrialization of the city. There is a very interesting topic of why Moscow is, after, let's say, removing the industries, is transforming the industrial areas into housing or mixed use, and why other cities around the world we are bringing back the industry to the center of the cities, and this is a global phenomenon. We will connect later with Beno Juarez. Beno, you will see, will be talking about something, some remote projects he's doing in Lima, but he was also studying in the Singularity University in San Francisco, and he will talk about this. Then we'll connect with Jonathan Minchin. He's in our lab in Barcelona, in the Green Fab Lab, and he will be talking on things related with food. And then, and this was not announced in the Facebook announcement, we'll be connecting at 8 p.m. with Greg Lin. He's from LA. He's one of the great inventors on the interaction between architecture and digital technologies, and we will talking about different projects, okay? So around 8:30, we will talk specifically about the master program, and if anyone want to make any question, we are more than happy to answer. So today I will be acting as a kind of DJ, you know. I will be trying to connect with the people there, saying hello, how are you, and trying that they tell us something that is interesting, and I hope that communication will work. So that's why I am moving now to my DJ table, and we'll start. So first connection, Thomas Ermacora, and he's somewhere in Europe, and we'll see. Hi, Thomas. How are you?
How are you?
Good. So we are here. Let me see if I don't destroy everything. Maybe I will. But we are in a lab in Moscow. There are around like 30 or 40 people here. And I already announced that you are somewhere in Europe. So where are you?
I am currently in Spain, working on a book on AI and blockchain and futures. And so I'm taking part-time work. So I will make your Skype the next 2 weeks, and I keep writing.
Good. So let's try to talk slow because and we'll see how the connection is going on. I was introducing you as a person that you are working on the idea of the reindustrialization of London. So what are you trying to do?
So yeah, I'll give. Did you take your video off?
Yeah, I remove it in order to try to see if this goes faster. Yeah.
Okay. How is the connection?
The connection now is perfect. You look great.
Thank you. I'll return the compliment. So it's very nice to meet you, and I can hear myself speak if I speak a bit broken up. Effectively, what we've observed in the last years is that through digital fabrication and distributed factory design platforms, we have an opportunity to create generate hardware startups that can do three things for cities. The first one, to cluster skills and develop a new ecology of work. And noticeably have digital work that they work there for some reindustrializing work anymore. At least not production. So if you take London with 5% city inside the M25, which is very service-oriented, and we think these digital technology kind of disrupt. The second thing is circularized production. So the production of goods and services not on an economy that draws resources from the world, draws resources from locals, so you transfer bits and use so the recipe, not the dish. Kind of way of saying, and when used to you, it's very disrupted. Learning our way to this is a reality, and we're part of the Fab City, which I suppose you are the instigator of, it's not the founder, with Neil and Thomas. And the thing that this will do completely, and we hope for, is it allows for creating economic development that's for the development of neighborhoods, that good for creating new kinds of service that replace what is failing in the welfare states.
So, taking a city like London as to start to move away those and then to this your proposals with one of the ways arrest and transit, and there's not much else like that. So, in order to recreate what was done today, whoever manages to do with governments, how many is all days.
We think that we produce this as a hack, as a neighborhood level, we compare the welfare system for education, through educating people into skill-based learning, through health by digital diagnostics and healthcare, And not least, for relevant society to have other kinds of services that are generally paid by municipality, which could include trash collection, wastewater systems that can be done partly or made cheaper. There's a sense of these automation and other services that come about, particularly to the Catholic these fab labs that are local productive ecosystems.
Thomas, so the audio is not going perfect. I think we understand like 60%, 65%.
That's not good.
When you say circular economy, do we understand better circular than economy? But I think that the general idea that you explained was clear on this idea of trying to reinvent or to bring back industry to the center of the cities. Could you explain which kind of companies are you working right now? So because they are, I suppose, car manufacturers. Is difficult to bring back, or so which kind of companies are discussing or you are trying to create this cluster for this circular economy?
So at this stage, is there any way maybe you can talk about your website? Or turn it down?
Sorry?
Maybe if you put your microphone on mute, it will help.
Ivan, what would you say?
If you put your phone mute.
Okay.
Yes, that's much better. So, is this better? Can you maybe give me say okay or great or Roger?
Yeah, Roger, you are an expert. This was the reason why it didn't work, so I cut Roger.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry if the audio was not good in the very beginning, but yes, effectively, we think that there is going to be three stages to attract companies back into cities. The first one is to create a prototype for startups, particularly hardware startups that use digital fabrication and distributed manufacturing as part of their normal way of developing their business model. And so this is what we have started doing. So we've done three things in that respect. The first one is we've established an impact fab lab. So we educate startups, and people who should be upskilling themselves. So that's what the fab normally does. We've done this in a way that we focus on local impact and making sure that these startups get to meet each other. So that's the second thing that we've done. We've created an informal cluster of companies that are in this area where I have my Fab Lab and Cultural Innovation Center called Maker Mile, which probably now in Barcelona will partly, I suppose, replicate some of the ideas behind that and probably take it to the next stage. And the third thing that we are doing is we are bringing in innovation partners, so the National Innovation Agency like Nesta or the Craft Council or the Design Council or other organizations, including universities, the Royal College of Arts, etc., that will support attracting the relationship with companies in the UK that are in 500 or in the SP 500. So those companies, we are starting a relationship with a consultancy, a global consultancy that I can't give the name of right now, but we hope that by doing so, they're going to introduce 5 or 10 of the main players that are considering digital fabrication and distributed manufacturing to create new kinds of workplaces and change the supply chain. So it's part consulting, part education, and part transformation of their own companies to improve their bottom line.
Thomas, incredible. So really now we understood 100%. So I would like to ask you something because, as I say, we are in Moscow. Moscow, the center of the city, at least like 30% is or was an industrial area, and now the city is thinking how to redevelop this area, these places. In many cases, removing the industry outside to the cities, maybe to other cities, and then there is not a clear plan on what you are saying, no? How really to bring new forms of industry here to the center. So can you explain how this process happened in London? If you had the perception that like 30 years ago there was a more industrial activity that maybe was moved to China and then start to have more like digital jobs, but mostly working with computing or programming and things like this. And now you are trying to bring back this process similar to Brooklyn or also the 22 At in Barcelona. So this idea of the city becoming productive again, no? What you could say to the people here in Moscow about this?
Thank you, Vicente. Indeed, it's there's the main problem, I think, is that it's still difficult to achieve this in a city like London that is aware of the need to make the change. So I think I'm part of the group of people who are putting this into a structured effort so that the government can understand that we need prototypical neighborhoods where companies can come and experiment, and the innovation agencies of the country can have a look, who's doing something interesting and how does this actually work. So in terms of the way that I would say Moscow has an opportunity is that in a way it's less advanced in its deindustrialization. So London, as I said, is a 95% service economy almost. And you have pretty much no industry left in the M25. You have some very highly specialized industry but you have not very much, major manufacturing. So as we enter into more customized, more personalized, more ad hoc, on-demand production that can be done, I'm pretty sure in the next 5 to 10 years, your phone will know, or the cloud will know through your phone what your habits are and sensor fleets and cities, and it will pretty much tell what are the things that you need, and you will be able to perhaps buy less but buy more, and buy more the utility of a product than the ownership of it. And as we do so, we will be changing also the way that we create manufacturing needs. But to my point around Moscow having an opportunity compared to London is that it still has a lot of industry. And if those industries transform themselves, they can keep the jobs in the city, and they can be higher paying jobs, and they can be developing a digital workforce that can service the world at the same time as the local population. And I think that's tremendously exciting for economic growth, because you can do two things at once. You can expand your local quality of life and local workforce and economic growth and taxpayer base at the same time as you are not dependent on the buyers that say only in Russia, because you can create a workforce that can be connected to other production sites all around the world. So your production can be ad hoc, but your workforce can be stabilized. And I think that the future of the factory really is going to be, having less but better machines and tools that are more customizable, and produce batches that are smaller but more designed for, what the people's needs are. And in that respect, just like Africa leapfrogged with cell phones instead of having to put wires in the ground, I think Moscow and cities like Moscow that are kind of advanced but not as service oriented as London and New York, for example, they can leapfrog into the next generation digital manufacturing era.
Okay, so I think that your contribution is great. You know, next year we are starting this new master program called Prototyping Future Cities, and we would like to invite you to come here with us to discuss deeper how you are, how this is happening in London, and to share your thought here also with the local authorities, because yeah, what you say is true. If still there are some productive activity here in the city, what is important is to retain that and to figure out how can produce this jump using new forms of technologies and new, what you say, smaller but better machines, not less but better machines. Yeah, this is a very good idea.
Fantastic. Thank you for inviting me today. I hope this was useful. And I have some slides I could show up the machines room and different things we've done in London and Dimorph, and I have some things if you want, but I think it's easier if we just keep it as next year we make it more in detail.
So thank you, Tomás. See you soon. Bye. We jump now to Lima, to Peru, to talk with Beno Juan. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so this was our first contact. You see that we had a problem in the first part of the conversation. Now we are moving to talk with Beno, and let's see if this works. Beno is in Lima.
Hola, hola.
Hello, Beno, how are you?
I'm very well, Super Vicente. Good to see you.
Oh, I destroyed something. Okay, so I will not touch this, but we are here in Moscow with what? Yeah, with 30 or 40 people. I'm going to remove the camera because it doesn't work well. It's better if I remove the camera, and maybe even I will remove when you talk, I will remove the macro. So, but what we would like to ask you is to explain you a little bit your story, how you enter working with digital fabrication on this idea of cities that make sense, what you did in San Francisco in the Singularity University, and what you are planning to do in the Amazon River. So what is, the equivalent here in the Amazons is Siberia, it's in the middle of somewhere, it's far away from everywhere, it's very cold. In the Amazon there are a lot of mosquitoes, so maybe you can try to explain us what you are trying to do with the communities over there.
Great, sure. Okay, let me share you my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vicente, and all friends, for this opportunity. Well, I come from the Peruvian jungle. I grew up in the Peruvian jungle in a very contrast context. By one hand, we have a very inspirational landscape with a lot of nature, amazing cultures, etc. But by the other hand, we had in the past terrorists in a very violent age of our country. For the most of the kids of my generation, the future could mean to become farmer or mother or maybe military or terrorist. Some friends of my school becomes terrorists in the past, so it was very hard, but fortunately, thanks to my family, I moved to Lima. I moved to the capital as many people that come to this new kind of jungle. This is like a city that grow up without any control, any planning, etc. So I fell in love of Lima. I decided to study architecture. It was one of the reasons why I decided to studied architecture. When I studied architecture, we're planning with some friends how can we create a sustainable city. We made many different prototypes and proposals about how to, for example, recycle energy, etc. As this device that we wanted to put inside of beds. These are micro turbines. Imagine micro turbines inside your bed or inside any place in the city to generate power. We call that the power of love. No? All the movement that you can generate will be recycled, for example, to lighting the facade. Imagine that you are walking by the street and you can see a building. All the facade of the building is totally lighting. So you say, no, this is full. We can move to another one, etc. No? So, but the problem was always we stop in the idea, stop it in the plans. We had not the ways to convert all these prototypes in a real product. So it was a very high crisis in my life because I had to decide if I wanted to continue exploring and creating new projects, innovating in different fields, or maybe more conventional projects in a traditional architectural office, etc. Fortunately for me, in 2009, I met these amazing people, thanks to Vicente, to make a real big change in my life, and another people like my friends Victor and another friends from Africa, with this vision to empower people with new technologies to create amazing projects and to make this idea real. Also, to me, Vicente, it's like a sign of disruptive people that are making amazing things in the world. So I learned from Vicente in Barcelona here in 2009, the Fab Academy, and I had the opportunity to make this idea real, not this prototype to create or generate power with your movement. I made during my training in Barcelona. Now this is a furniture that is totally lighting with your movement. It have inside the micro turbines, and you can use that to light in the furniture, or to charge your iPhone or whatever you want. Also, I was part of this amazing project and met crazy people where we are working still today in different projects. After that, I come back to Peru, and I funded, thanks to the IAC and the Spanish government and the Fab Foundation, the first Fab Lab in South America. And from this day today, I am working in the development of the Fab Lab from Latin America Network. Our mission is how to integrate the different Fab Labs in order to generate regional projects. The project that I am personally involved with is the Floating Fab Lab Amazon. As you know, global warming is our big challenge in the world. One of the most risky areas is the Amazon rainforest. We are losing the Amazon because of global warming, but the highest problem for me in the jungle is the access to knowledge. The most of the people today have not access to internet or electricity, etc. Now, this is a picture from last year, but it's exactly the same conditions that I had 30 years ago when I studied in the jungle. So one of the mission is how to empower local communities with new technologies and how to connect them with global communities of innovators. So this is the reason why we create this project, the Floating Fab Lab, that will navigate to the Amazon, through the Amazon River and tributaries, and will be like a bridge between local communities and global communities. This is part of the project that we are doing with UA Bureau, and that was part of the Fab Lab house also. This is part of the new versions of the Floating Fab Lab, where we are going to increase many different labs as biolabs for synthetic biology research, new kind of 3D printers using local materials, local resins, etc. And also opening the opportunity for local communities to develop their own solutions for their own problems in power, in water, clean water, in housing, etc. The vision is to create a network of these fab labs that will navigate the Amazon and, for example, incubate projects for housing. These are the traditional houses in the Amazon. It have a big problem because the river grow up more than 6 and 10 meters year by year, so they have to replace all the pilots every year. But we can learn from jungle, we can learn from nature. For example, this is the pambil. The pambil is a walking tree. It's a tree that can walk more than 6 meters in 10 years. The reason why it moves is because their roots grow up outside of the ground, and it grows more in the direction where the palms are more unstable. So, taking this principle, we are designing houses that will be that could adapt to the change of the environment. Now, it is a house that will move according to the level of the water. Also, we are researching about what is happening in the traditional houses in the Amazon and learning from nature. For example, this is the Mimosa pudica. It's a leaf, that glows when you touch it. So we are creating facades that will close with the rain. With the rain come, it will close automatically. It is also an integration of digital fabrication and local materials, and exploring how can we create these floating structures. Also, we are exploring about how to empower the biodiversity through pollination. So we are losing pollinators in the world at bees. In the Green Fab Lab, we have this amazing project in Barcelona, in Valdaura. This is the smart beehives, that we are also adapting for locals in the Amazon, especially for the Witoto community. For example, Zoila, she is the president of the local community, and she's very interested to this kind of devices because they will increase the production of beewax. And also with digital fabrication, we are working to create micropipes with these beewax. And these micropipes that we are creating, integrating synthetic biology and digital fabrication and biomaterials, we are creating these micropipes to grow bacteria, yeast, or human cells in order to create biostructures. Also, we are exploring in biosensors, especially for water contamination detector. For example, one of the biggest contaminators is the oil, and also heavy metals, and also urban waste that we have a lot in the rivers. So in this sense, the group Jellyfish Biorobotics, led by Luis Flores, Carlos Venega, and Julio Valdivia, are developing this kind of soft robotics that will navigate the rivers, and with inside it have a biosensor that will detect all these kind of contaminators. And also for kids, we are developing, for example, most of the kids in the jungle, they drink directly the water from the river. We are developing this kind of bracelet to detect the different contaminators, and also the kids will report that in an application in their phones, will alert for not only other kids, also scientists about the presence of these contaminators. Thanks to this project, I was invited by the United Nations 2 years ago when they landed in the 70 global goals for sustainable development, and as one of the project that can address all these 17 goals. No, I was in United Nations 2 years ago, and then I was invited to Singularity University for the Global Solutions Program in last year. With my team, we work in how to eradicate malnutrition in the world, and I developed this new version of 3D printer. It is a printer for nutrients that integrates also synthetic biology with robotics, with artificial intelligence, with materials research and digital fabrication in order to produce in your house all the nutrients that you need. So to make it, you will upload your information, your nutritional information, for example, to your computer, or we can take that from your wearables or from your genetic test or your nutritional test, etc. All this information will control the level of nutrients and the kind of nutrients that you need per day, and you will drink it directly as a liquid, or we are going to transform it in a sphere using these spherification techniques that come from molecular gastronomy. So these are part of the different prototypes that we make in the Fab Lab. I am making another version for the jungle. In this case, we are using different superfoods that we have in the jungle in order to print also the fruit that you want in the shape that you want in any place. It is especially for kids. As you know, well, I come from the jungle, and one of the biggest problems in the jungle is the nutrition. We have amazing superfruits in the jungle, but most of the people have not a good nutrition. But by the other hand, agriculture is a big problem in the Amazon rainforest. More than 20% of the rainforest is lost because has been lost because the reforest, the depredation for agriculture. My father is farmer, so he is my father. I understand very well this problem. No? The most of the farmers in the jungle have not another opportunities for economical sense. No? So through this 3D printer of fruits, we are bringing people a possibility to export their products through the world. Imagine all these printers around the world using, for example, the amazing Fab Lab network. We are more than 1,000 Fab Labs in the world where we can replicate this kind of machines, and this could be a way for farmers in the Amazon to export their products not as a raw material but like a cartouches that will be like the ink of these nutrient printers. No? So this is part of the project that we are doing in order to empower local communities, in order to incubate in the Amazon rainforest the future manufacturing for nutrients, for bioprinting, for biosensors, etc. No? So finally, I would like to invite you to follow your dreams. The picture that you can see here is the Amazon River in one of the points that it started. I think if you imagine if you are here, it will be very difficult to imagine that at the end it will become that. No, it's an amazing river that can transform all the landscape around it. So it's happening exactly with our dreams. Maybe at the beginning or maybe today you can think that you have not the resources or the experience or the partners of the technology to make your projects real. But if you keep follow your passion, follow what you really want to do for the world, I think you will finally get this big impact that you want for you and for the world. Well, this is in short my presentation. Thank you, Vicente, for these opportunities, and I am open for any question and comment.
Yeah, thank you, Beno. So everything was very impressive. I hope you will write a book on your history. because starting from the jungle, you are back to the jungle somehow, passing through many different layers. But what is clear is that from the labs, you are thinking that you are really strong enough that you can do whatever you want. So you are working with architecture, but also with biology, with food production, etc. So I think that this is absolutely great. So is there any question from the audience here? Yeah, we have an Italian friend here that want to make a question. Yeah, no? Oh, sorry, I understood you want. So any question from the audience? Anyone living in a city with a big river?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you well, the question.
Sorry? No, there is no question for the moment. Yeah, there is a question from Lena.
So I've missed a bit the step after you said that you came to Barcelona. Who were after your investors or your clients, and for whom actually you are working now, and how do you realize your projects? What was it? No? No? Okay, I can repeat.
Yeah. Repeat.
Yeah? Okay, so do you hear? Here? No?
I'm here.
Hello, could you repeat the question, please? I couldn't hear you well.
So now you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
The question that Lena was doing, because in fact he's asking something she's interested. So when you came back from Barcelona to Lima, who was helping you to develop your project? There were some private investors, there were some organizations. So what did you do in order to realize or to develop what you were learning in Barcelona?
Great, that is an amazing question. Well, first of all, thanks to Vicente, because it was not only to learn about Fab Labs in Barcelona, the scholarship, this amazing scholarship includes the implementation of the Fab Lab and the sustainability for the Fab Lab for 2 years. So it was amazing. And thanks to this project, thanks to the support of the Spanish government. After that, we started to look for different ways for our own sustainability. The first was the workshops, all the education field, workshops, trainings, etc. The other was services, like for example, some works that we made for some companies, and the other was the implementation of new labs. But today we moved to project development as Floating Fab Lab, of this bioprinter, etc. But to survive, we made many different things as workshops, especially. But we take all these resources to finance our biggest projects at Floating Fab Lab and this other in the jungle.
Okay, Beno, so we need to cut because now we are jumping to Barcelona. John Minchin is there. We had before Tomás Elmacora, and we'll be connecting later with Los Angeles with Greg Lin. So thank you very much. And I hope that we can invite you at some moment here to Moscow. There is a river. I don't know if it's legal to have a house here, but maybe we can try to see what happened.
Wonderful. I will love that. Please, any question, comments, or if you want to join us in this project, just let us know through Vicente, and we will be happy to also to support any of your projects or ideas. Thank you. Thank you, Vicente. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So yes, this is working. The presentation was good. Beno is a kind of Latin America hero. He went to Barcelona, and we were happy because, well, we got the support from the Spanish government, and they paid education in Barcelona, but also they give money to create a lab in Lima. That was the first in Latin America. But the bad news is that the lab was done inside the School of Architecture, and at at some point the school stole the machines and everything. So suddenly they start to look for other kind of projects and financing and everything. But he made the first lab in Latin America, and that's why he was invited to United Nations and the Singularity University. And what is super interesting is that, and this is what we learned also from MIT, that you know where you start, but you don't know where you finish. So that means that he started being an architect, but you see he was talking about biofabrication and about social engagement and about many other things that are not exactly designing, but what is important is that they are keeping moving. And well, now we are trying to connect with John Minchin. John is in Baidaura. That is one laboratory that will be in fact part of the Shukhov Lab master program. But let's see if John can connect and can explain us something. Hey John, how are you?
Hello Vicente. Hello everybody. I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, John, so we are here in Moscow with around 40 people listening to you. What we experience is that the best thing we can do is we eliminate our video, and even we eliminate the audio. So what I propose you is that I know that you have a presentation, you can share your screen and you can explain the projects mostly related with food and with the biotechnologies there in the Green Fab Lab and the Baidaura Labs. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'll take this opportunity if you can see my screen.
Can you talk a little bit louder? The audio now is not good. Before was better.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can shout loud enough you can hear me in Moscow. Well, whilst you can see me, if you can see me, I'll just give you a quick look at where I am.
Yes, we can see
which
you.
Which is Fab Lab. So we have many prototyping projects. We have many things on the walls. There's plants over here in the corner, which we're growing in the lab. So this is a Fab Lab which is very much involved with growing things. It's a Fab Lab which is situated in the middle of a natural park. And just as I share my screen, you should be able to see this. Can you see my screen being shared?
Yes, we can see. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to skip to the beginning here. Give me a second. So some of you I know have already visited us here in Barcelona at the Green Fab Lab. And you can see that we have quite a wonderful setting. It's around 130 hectares or a little more. And it's part of Barcelona's network of Fab Labs and maker spaces and Ateneos. For a long time, and also together with Vicente, these things have been coming together. But we have a very special site here, which, as you can see, is around 130 hectares. There's many valleys going through this natural park just close to Barcelona. And we are situated in that beautiful house on one of the tops of those valleys. So we have a legacy of industry and we have a legacy of agriculture here. We occupy a post-agricultural and a post-industrial landscape. So although we look at the forest and we think it's green, there's lots of trees, it's not a natural forest. It's the result of human intervention. So you can see here that a lot of the trees have been removed. The land has been terraced. There's been horizontal contour lines put into the landscape, which slows down the movement of the water and allows for an agricultural system. So that's an old photograph, I believe, from around 1940s. And so the landscape looks a little different now. So it's grown back mostly into a pine forest. And there's also oaks and holm oaks, which is the preferred type of trees here. And you can see also that there's people. There's a lot of people around. So we have a group called Social Agriculture that's been running for some years, where we bring volunteers or workers or students into the forest. And we work in a system of agriculture, not only socially minded, but also minded for ecological reasons. So we plant in a polyculture. We plant with a multitude of different types of species in the same location at the same time, which helps the species to grow as a guild, as an orchestra of species, as an ecosystem. So when we're doing agriculture, we're often thinking about conservation and the ecology as well. So I'm just going to skip through some slides. Some of these you may have seen already from other presentations. But obviously we are all part of a network. And it's quite a famous network that we know. But we were not the only ones to be part of a network, and we were not the only ones to get our hands dirty as makers, as designers, as innovators. So at the site of Can Vaidaura, there existed a group of Cistercian monks. And in some ways, they were the original makers. They were the original growers. So they were very experimental. They produced what they consumed as well, which is a very important factor. And they also worked between a network. So you can see here all across Europe the network of Cistercian monasteries. They were working for self-sufficiency. They wanted to know the land. They wanted to know where their life came from. They were interested in getting their hands dirty with manual labor, agriculture, architecture. They were working with water, and they were also looking at the local materials that they could find. So in some ways across Europe in the 15th, 16th centuries, they were sharing knowledge, and that was a revolutionary aspect, particularly for agriculture. So here in Vaidaura, we live in their legacy in some ways. We have slightly different tools, of course, so sharing the same inventory of digital manufacturing. But this is just a laboratory. This is just a place where you can see electronics, cutting, additive manufacturing, subtractive manufacturing. But those are just the tools. It's very interesting, and it's much more interesting to think about the projects that go through those. So previously in Fab Labs, we've seen how to make a canoe, how to make electronics, skateboards, chess pieces, the Fab House. So those are all very interesting projects, but I think the projects which are more interesting are the ones which allow us to sustain ourselves, so at the base of what we need. So again, there's some projects to do with fabrication that involve clay, local materials. But here, again, we are much more interested in transversal knowledge. So looking at agriculture, looking at biology, looking at the materials that allow us to make new things in the future. So some of you might recognize this man in the middle. This is Ivan, helping us with the open source beehives project some many years ago. And what you see in front of Ivan there are some of the beehives that we've made. I'll talk a little bit about this as an agricultural project, but also as a digital project. So around 3 years ago, we released a crowdfunding campaign. I'll just show you this slide. And we managed to raise $63,000 with Indiegogo between a group in Colorado, ourselves in Barcelona, a group in Brussels, as well as in Australia. And we prototyped since that time many different beehives. We wanted to do beekeeping in a way that was healthy for the bees. So in a normal industrial beehive, you will see the movement of the queen restricted to this bottom box. You will see that they have to kill the queen every year to have a productive hive where there's enough young bees to produce the amount of honey that they need. But also industrial beekeeping is about moving those bees around monocultures of farms. So a farm that is purely of oranges, or a farm that is purely of almonds, or of cherries. That's a monoculture farm. And they need the bees to pollinate those trees. So in many ways, we learn about agriculture through keeping bees, through these insects, these pollinators. And you can see some of the data analysis on the right here. That's data that we take from analyzing the honey and analyzing the pollen as well. But it's also data that we take from the communication and the traveling distance that the bees do in their range. So you can see here that we have quite a different variety of plants and flora and fauna that is coming around from, and here you can see some of the pollen index. You can see in comparison also with the bees in Vidaura, what sort of plants that they're going to feed and how far that they're traveling. And it's very interesting to do a comparison then with other bees in other places around the world. So we've discovered that bees in cities in Europe are actually healthier sometimes than the bees in the agricultural settings. And that's because in the agricultural settings, it's more or less a food desert, because we grow one crop at a time. So for us, it's very interesting to understand what we can sense, what sort of data we can take from the bees, and how we can use that to make a comparison to learn about a healthy landscape. So beyond the project of bees, and I'll just tell you, you can download all of the files, they're all open source. We now have a community of beekeepers in around 20 countries, but I'm not sure that we've got any beehives in Russia yet, so it's up to you to make one of these, and we can give you some sensors as well. So this is an open source project, which we are also launching again as a crowdfunding campaign. So in this very similar way of trying to understand what is around us through the bees as sensors, we're also beginning to look at biology as a way to understand our local environment, to help us with materials and knowledge. So you can see here Dr. Nuria Conde Puello, and she's working with a micropipette What you see in front of her here is a PCR, which is a polymerase cycle reactor. It's also called a thermocycler. And that amplifies DNA. It doesn't change DNA, it just amplifies it so you can read it. So a mini PCR that she has here, that she's operating, costs now around 400 euros. You can make one in a fab lab, and then you can do your own CSI, crime scene investigations. But you can also use it to understand what type of species there are in your local neighborhood. You can barcode those species and identify exactly what they are by their gene content. So we are following a tradition here of making our own tools for investigation. This is looking at a wasp, and we've encapsulated the wasp in beeswax and paraffin, and then we can slice that wasp and then begin to make a 3D model and see what's inside also of that wasp, of that insect. It's very easy to do, and we often don't need a $100,000 laboratory to do these very simple tasks. And that's quite why this investigation is useful in a fab lab. So there's other projects around. We have some of the wonderful moss projects, which you will know from Elena and Ivan. We have a sample of those hanging on the wall. There's also working with moss and clay. But I wanted to show you this. This is called it's called an organ on a chip. Now what it does is take the concept of a microcontroller and making a very small electronic device that is able to do calculation. This is an organic calculation device. So this is called microfluidics, and you can use a laser cutter to cut these very small channels in acrylic, and then by mixing different types of organic compounds, you are able to have a detection, a yes or a no come out of that. So you can think of this as a very small chip or even a transistor there. So these experiments are all also online. In the same way you can do the Fab Academy, you can now do the Bio Academy as well. So if you search for Bio Academy and Google that, you will see the very same sort of setup from the Fab Academy, but this time not with Neil Gershenfeld, but with George Church, who's this guy on the side and looks a little bit like Darwin. That's what we call him, the Darwin of our time. I think he's actually memorized the human genome, so he's quite a smart guy. And all of the videos of those lessons are online and you can watch them. So just to finish and to situate ourselves again, we're very interested to work with metabolisms. How much we consume, how much we can grow, how much energy we are using. So we want to be very precise about managing the data. How many lettuces can we grow with the amount of water that we have? How many people can we feed in that way? How much energy goes in to the ground? And how best can we conserve and make that energy metabolism efficient? So again, when we have a consortium of different plants, what we see is the overstory puts nutrients into the ground, which can then go to feed an understory, which can then produce a habitat for the insects, which protect the smaller plants. So you can create an immense kind of cycle of nutrient flow and chemical flow within an ecosystem that you cannot do when you are growing in a monoculture. So also part of this efficiency is that we don't want to use petrochemicals in that ecosystem either. We don't need to use petrochemicals because we already have the nutrients being provided by these growing organisms. So we do go to work, and this is the beginning of a tool chain, starting with a scythe, I think Vicente will help us to understand what this is called in Catalan. But you can see we're all going to work, we're all bent over, we're working just like those Cistercian monks in the past. But we don't want to live in the past. We want to live into the future as well. So, working with data, working with microcontrollers, working with the Fab Lab, and synthesizing some of those things with software is the sort of research that we do here. So we've been working for some years now with Sony Computer Science Laboratory. Here is Peter Anape putting up a greenhouse. You wouldn't believe how interested Sony are in agriculture, but there's that.
John, we have 2 more minutes only because we need to jump to LA.
Okay, that's perfect. I have 2 more slides. So we've recently won a European call for working with robotics and agriculture. This is a very early stage prototype of a robot that can do in-field phenotypic analysis. So this moving robot will be able to move over a plant bed, identify which species are the ones which you have planted, and also try to understand what species are growing on that land as well. It can help with weeding, and it can help understand the data flow of an ecosystem. That also together with drones. So some of the drones have been developed here. They also collide with the ecosystem too. So these drones are also open source. You can download them. But we are working in particular for this European call called ROMI, which is robotics and microfarms, to take data from the air and take data from the land, to be able to understand a little bit more as to how the ecosystem works, how we can protect it, and how we can increase its metabolism to be more productive for us as well as the ecosystem. So that's my 2 slides and my 2 minutes, and thank you very much.
Good, John, so fantastic. Again, this is another great sample of how you put people, machines, technology, and suddenly, oh, Anna Popova, she's in the back. Anna Popova, can you say something? Anna Popova, where are you from?
Hello, I'm from Siberia.
Okay, so Anna Popova is from somewhere in Siberia, but she's in Barcelona right now. So, good. Great to see you both. I explain later what are the implications between the Shukhov Lab and Vidaura Labs for the master program in the future, but it has been an incredible presentation, John. What we hope is that we really can eat good lettuce and tomatoes and things like this. Technology is great, but what we like to do every day is to eat, and I'm sure that you like it too. Yeah. Thank you, John. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye. Good. So for the moment, everything is going too much. It's too well. I mean, it's working well. Now is the most challenging contact because, oh yeah, so, well, you know Greg Lynn no puede llamar empresarial porque está desconectado. Oh, it say is not connected. We'll see if this works. You know, Greg Lynn was one of the fathers of the digital architecture, and now he's here.
Hey, Vicente, how are you?
Greg, how are you?
Good.
So today is your Independence Day, or what?
Yeah, it is. It's a holiday, but it's quiet, so that's good.
Good. So I cannot move my computer because if not, I will destroy everything. But there are around like 40 young people here in Moscow.
Right.
We were in contact discussing with some people in London, in Lima, in Barcelona. And now we would like that you share with you, because you are an architect, you have been working with many projects related with engineering. I will show later the boat, because Greg was building a boat with, well, a big boat, I mean a big boat with their own hands. But he asked me, he proposed me to talk about some specific topics. You know, I explained many times that I am here in Moscow because I can find two great traditions. The first tradition is on architecture, because during many times, but especially in the Russian Revolution, they had architects like Melnikov and many others doing very modern buildings, inventing social housing, etc. That's a great artist, great graphic designers. And then the other great tradition is the technological tradition. They were the first country that sent one man to the space. Even they sent the first woman to the space. I saw the movie some days ago. There's some celebration some days ago about that. But then now there is this new challenge about architecture and the space. We launched a competition about cities for a flying wall, and Greg will be part of the jury. But I think that you would like to talk about some specific things. So now the floor is yours.
Oh, great. Well, so I'm going to count on you, Vicente, with some of the visuals. But I think that it would be maybe interesting to talk about a project we started about a year and a half ago to look at technology of mobility and movement in cities, and to think about a way of handling greater and greater density and more need for movement. And it's a company we set up called Piaggio Fast Forward. Jeffrey Schnapp and I founded it in Boston, along with the Piaggio Group, who makes Vespas. And we looked at cities like Hanoi and Bangkok and Mumbai and the way they handle transportation. And it's by making things very granular and very fine grain. And we're doing that combined with autonomy, and I think the best term is actually localization, meaning that you can have a vehicle that always knows where it is and always knows about what's around it. And that isn't a question so much of GPS or positioning, but actually of vision and perception. So it's making us think about cities and environments in a much more intelligent way, and in a way where things are much more dynamic. And so, Vicente, those were the videos I sent you. One is a video of kind of how we see the city and a few different use cases for this granular scale mobility. And then the other video is just some testing from, maybe 8 weeks ago of how these vehicles are working following people.
So Greg, what I did was to already, let me see. If this
So
works.
I don't know, actually, Vicente.
Yeah,
are
Greg,
you-
I'm here. So what I did was to play with the video, the small video that shows how that vehicle is moving. There is another video that shows more like how people are working about this, how they are designing and these kind of things.
In order to
Perfect.
put
Okay.
together different cultures.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just
and
let those
people.
play, and then you tell me when they're done, because I think that the visual describes the whole thing better than me narrating.
Yeah, now you are drawing. Now we are in a video where you are drawing.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
it's
That's
you,
kind of
yeah.
the video about the company.
But that means that you are working with Piaggio in order to design this thing, and you are doing the prototype on that.
Exactly. And it's and it's very much a kind of our focus isn't so much on jobs and tasks, but much more about helping people move around and carry things.
Yeah, and because Greg, you obviously we know, many people know that you were working at the beginning of your career more trying to see how the parametric design will help on the construction or the design on the production of buildings. But we see that you are more and more involved in other kind of impact of digital technologies related with some machines, some prototypes, etc. So how do you feel, or how do you see this movement about the impact of digital technologies in not in architecture but more in our life?
Sure. So autobiographically, I really started using digital technology to look at dynamics. And the first things I was using were animation tools and simulation tools. But the processing speed of a desktop computer made it very hard to use those things intuitively. But what was possible with animation tools 20 years ago was controlling a robot with them, like an industrial robot. So like a lot of people, I started off thinking about dynamic environments, but really was only able technically to control very simple construction tools, like KUKA arms and CNC mills, or laser cutters, 3D printers. So compared to the robot in the video, a fabrication tool is a very simple machine. It's fixed, it doesn't move, it's repetitive. But I think now, as it's more available, I'm interested in much more complex machines. And I also think that the promise of digital technology 2 decades ago was about creating intelligent cities and intelligent buildings. But what most of us ended up doing was figuring out how to build things with simple tools. But I think now there's the ability for architects to be involved in more than just fabrication. And I think now there's a possibility for architects to be involved in rethinking cities and rethinking motion and mobility and transportation, to help rethink energy, and to start to build much more sophisticated environments for people, rather than just figuring out how to fabricate environments. So, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think really the entire field of architecture is pivoting a little bit from a focus on digital fabrication to actually thinking about digital intelligence in the built environment. And that goes all the way from a room up to how we think about cities and urbanism.
Great, fantastic. So now I would like to show you, also send us another video about the autonomy for the future that is more like an animation. So I just play that where we see one drone, and so what is this?
So we wanted to think about how smaller vehicles might change cities and how it would give people options. Where I live, I can walk to everything I need in my life, you know, from stores and shops for food, to my office, to my kids' school. It's all in pedestrian or skateboard range. But more than half the time, I decide to use a car because I need to carry something. You know, so I'm using my car, which is a very inefficient method of transport, just to move around things that might weigh 10 or 20 kilos. So that video is just showing how a vehicle that can follow a person and carry, you know, up to 20 kilos could suddenly let them make different kinds of choices about how to move. So they can be pedestrian, they can be cyclists, or they could be, you know, board riders, all with the ability to not have to use a car just for its carrying capacity.
Oh, you are, Greg, you are perfectly synchronized with the video, because when you finish to talk, the video finished. So.
Well, I guess it's maybe not the first time I've shown the video, I guess.
Yeah. So, Greg, I would like then, could you talk a little bit about this? Because this is fascinating. You know, I didn't know that this was your work, because I already saw that machine, and this idea of how you send, let's say, things in the city. What you are proposing is to do something that is more related with the ground. But I suppose you have seen this patent by Amazon, where they say that they want to have drones and they want to have zeppelins storing books flying on the city. So what do you think that the sky can play a new role? Because also you or part of your team has been involved in some movies in Hollywood about, like many movies. So can you talk us about the use of the sky, and can you talk, as you that live in LA, near of many movies people, how these people are thinking about the future and how they use even the movies in order to introduce new ideas of the future in the market?
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, I think the elevator was probably had the greatest impact on cities and buildings of any piece of technology. I think more than the steel frame, even the elevator really changed the way people thought about living and working, and the opportunities for architects. Now, you know, that was more than that's a century ago that the elevator was starting to be used. So now I think with aerial drones, with helicopters, with new kinds of elevators. I mean, elevators that go to either extreme heights or also that don't just move vertically. It's letting us start to think about new ways of being tall and being vertical. And it's also going to start to suggest new ways of moving through the city and moving from building to building. I think that in the last 10 years, in Asia primarily, I mean, thinking about Singapore, you know, park spaces and aerial spaces are really changing the way we use the sky. I know with the World Trade Center site competition, the group of us that made United Architects, we all thought about the sky as the primary space, much more than the ground. and starting to connect with sky bridges, and we kind of called it the city in the sky. But I think with a combination of what's possible now for delivering goods aerially, like you talked about from Amazon and Google, to infrastructure that's starting to fly, like the Facebook plane that brings digital infrastructure to places by having it stay aloft for days and days at a time, as well as new kinds of transportation, both kind of lightweight human scale drones as well as new kinds of vertical transportation and elevators. There's really a lot for architects to think about in terms of aerial cities. I also know that when we got a drone in the office, we started to get this completely new perspective on sites all the time. With the Detroit Packard plant and a housing tower we're working on here in LA, one of the very first views we get is this view in the air from where the building will eventually be, and it just gives you a completely different perspective on the city. So I think this competition, it's one of the right topics to be thinking about is verticality and aerial mobility and how that's going to change cities, and also let us do new kinds of infrastructure that you couldn't do otherwise, that might be too expensive or too slow as well. So I don't think it's just about moving people, I think it's also about moving data.
And Greg, and then I was asking about Hollywood, how Hollywood are dealing with interface, and so the movie 2001, that was the one revolutionary statement by Stanley Kubrick. Then when we arrived 2001, we were asking ourselves, he was right 40 years ago. Now with Blade Runner, that in fact was in LA, I don't know if it was this year, and now they are celebrating because they saw that they are not right here, right there. They launch to another movie like in 40 years, because maybe we'll be there. So how do you think movies and Hollywood is playing a role in order to define what we imagine, what we love, what we are expecting for our reality?
Sure. I mean, I had a little bit of experience with this. I know with Minority Report, Alex McDowell and Steven Spielberg started by interviewing architects and just asking architects what they think the near future would be. And Hollywood is a really great resource because they're always thinking about the near future. Like, Blade Runner, certain aspects of it were science fiction. And Philip K. Dick is, always providing science fiction with the main story. But with the environments of Hollywood films, those environments are usually showing a near future. So the things that they're starting to explore, say, in the new Blade Runner film, or in Minority Report with the cars that kind of drive up the sides of buildings magnetically and things, those are all ideas they're pulling from everything from the car companies to architects that everybody's thinking about. So Hollywood is a really amazing machine for collecting visions from architects and urbanists for the near future, and then trying to figure out how those would work and also how they would feel and be experienced visually.
So I completely agree. Beyond the, can you tell us a little bit about the boat? Why you was interested in the boat and how? Because it was, maybe one of your bigger constructions in the sense that you moved from doing prototypes of things or trying to apply digital fabrication to facades to really try to mold the perfect form or to cast the perfect form, and after that to produce with carbon fibers and things like this. So how long it took for you to make the boat and etc.?
Sure. So when I wrote Animate Form in the 1990s, I used this reference to the hull of a boat, where I said that when you think about a building, you tend to think about it in terms of statics. That you want everything to be static, so you want to always make sure all the forces equal zero at the end of the design. But that's more of a habit than a requirement. And I used the example of a boat where I said, well, a boat, even though the shape of the boat doesn't change, I mean, the sails change, but the shape of the hull doesn't change, it's thought of in dynamic terms, and that it's thought of at multiple points of sail. So, multiple directions of the wind is what shapes the final form of the hull. And so, 25 years later, I started doing more sailing again and thought, wouldn't it be a great kind of research and experiment to use tools, simulation tools, primarily CFD or computational fluid dynamics, to begin to shape a form which was not meant to be static but was meant to be dynamic. And in particular, I wanted to do that using just simulating air and water. So with just the force of the wind and the dynamics of movement through water, start to begin to think about a different kind of a form. And here I would really be indebted to Bernard Cash and his concept of the objectile, of a thing that's an object which is a projectile. It's designed to move dynamically rather than just sit stationary. So we spent, with a naval architect named Fred Kuruble, we spent about a year designing and simulating the boat. Then we spent another maybe 5 or 6 months doing the construction drawings, which the construction drawings were all about defining the structure at the scale of a fiber. So all of the load paths and the structural behavior was thought at almost a microscopic level. So instead of kind of resolving all the forces into a beam or a steel member, it's obviously a shell, and all of the forces are carried in that shell through oriented tapes and fibers. So, and we did that actually with a fairly large team with a guy named Hervé Deveau in Brest, France, and a little bit Kurt Jordan, a whole number of structural engineers. So that took about a year and a half to design and engineer the boat, and then it took about another year and a half to build it. And one of the things that I wanted to do was, it's very sensitive to weight, so you want it to be incredibly stiff and strong, so every little force translates into motion, but you also need it to be incredibly light. So the first way to save weight is always to use less material. So the kind of sustainability and high performance really go together in that sense. And so the best way to save weight is to eliminate parts. And I have to say, in the 90s for me, the digital tool was all about complexity, and it was all about building with more and more parts and having all the parts be different. With the boat, it was a radical change from that, where my attitude was, how do I build with fewer and fewer parts and have every single part doing more than one job? So there are no connectors, there's no secondary structure, there are very few pieces of hardware or components of attachment. Everything is synthesized and integrated into as few parts as possible. And more I realize intelligence and high performance is not about building something with more pieces and more complexity. It's about having every part and piece doing more than one job so that you can start to have this kind of high performance multifunctioning thing, but which is very integrated and synthesized. So anyway, that whole process, it was about a 3, maybe even 3.5 year process, and most of the small components we actually built in my office and became very skilled at not only designing for composite structures, but actually building in carbon fiber and different kinds of fiberglass to come up with these kind of super light, super strong, and also highly integrated structures.
Okay, Greg, so yeah, I was showing some of the pictures that I found on the internet with the design and the production of the boat. So yeah, I think we are about to finish. Yeah, I think I am impressed. I suppose the people around is also impressed on how to bring design to production and then to things that are moving in the city, and they are part of the city and they are defining the city. So we hope that we can invite you at some moment to Moscow. Are you still teaching in Vienna?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. So, are you still teaching in Vienna?
I am. Yeah, I'm there. Every 6 weeks or so.
Okay, so we'll try to bring you here to Moscow. Here everyone has a grandfather that used to make rockets. Sorry.
Nice.
So, but rockets and flying to the space. So, yeah, it will be great to work and to talk with people. Sorry, because I moved. The opening lecture here was given by people from Foster's that they were working in the moon base. That this is another fascinating question, and how to use 3D printing using the dust of the moon and Mars, etc. So, still there are many things to be discovered. And it will be great that you can come here at some point, and then we can talk about maybe doing things together.
Sounds great. No, sounds really great.
So, Greg, thank you very much. So, I am going to try to show you, I will send you some videos. I was doing some videos. Maybe I will destroy everything, but you see, you are there. There are many people.
Oh, there I am.
And we have, we have Kentucky Fried Chicken in front of us,
it's everywhere, isn't
and
it?
Starbucks there. So this is Moscow, Uber everywhere. So yeah, we are connected.
All right. Well, I actually like to get away from Kentucky Fried Chicken and Uber, but I still want to come to Moscow.
Okay, Greg, thank you very much. See you soon. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Ciao. Have a good day.
So, what do you think? It really worked. So we can say that part of what we do, and that's why I'm here. I was born in Valencia, I was chief architect of Barcelona, and I was invited by Alexei Novikov to create the lab and then to start the master program. Is because we are connected. We are more and more working with other people. Some of the people here, Ivan and Lena, were studying with us in Barcelona. I was working with Greg in some other projects. And what we like to do always, what is interesting is that the people are talking in somehow with a shared language about technology, fabrication, etc. But at the same time, they are super specific. Greg is talking about technology, Hollywood, etc. because he's just around there. Benno is talking about the Amazons because he was born there, etc. So the question and our challenge is what we can learn here in Moscow and how we can improve your city, your country, and then inspire to the world by using the best that you have here. So my two basic, simple arguments have been always trying to merge your tradition on design, on art, or invention, and also on architecture and urbanity somehow with the tradition on technologies. And that's why we created this place, and that's why we are launching this master program that will start next September. So I don't know if you have any question or any comment to what we see until now. If you have, you can do it now. If not, maybe, I don't know if anyone is interested that we talk a little bit on the program we are launching next September. So, what do you prefer? Comments? Questions? No? Should I keep talking? Yes? It was great. I mean, it really worked, and Greg, it really is amazing. Did you see the Frank Gehry picture? Because he was the person that should be after Frank Gehry. He was working with digital fabrication using software like Katia, that is what Frank Gehry started to use in the 90s and made the Bilbao project. And he was he was teaching in Colombia, and then he was one of the really first person working on the digital fabrication since the very beginning. And now the interesting thing is that we are again a little bit in the same point, because all of us we are working related, working around cities, but in his case his father was an engineer, and this is somehow important. Well, so as we say, we are going now, I'm going to share like in 10 or 15 minutes some ideas about the master we are launching, that it was part of the presentation. I explain, well, maybe it's repetitive if anyone saw it, so, but I like to show this image of this space, how it was before. So this is not a class in the third or fourth floor, this is here. And the first time we entered here with Rodion, that is somewhere. Where is Rodion? There? Okay, he's working, good. So, well done. So what obviously this is not the place we wanted to have, because we wanted to have a place where education should be about making things. So our idea, as you saw before, all these people are talking about what they do, not about what they think they would like to do. And that's why, John raised $65,000 to make beehives, because he wanted to have a platform to produce honey, but not only to produce honey, but the system to make honey. So everyone that says something need to prove that this is possible. So that's why what we did was to destroy this place and to discover that behind this place was something like this that was really very amazing. Many people say that's impossible. When the people say that's impossible, I was afraid. They say maybe it's impossible. impossible to do this. But the funny thing is that it was more than possible, and the rector from the university has been really very supportive, etc. So the process of transformation was great. We discovered here in the left, you can see that there is one pillar. It's not dirty because it's dirty, but because it's full of Soviet newspapers. So we like very much this idea of funding newspaper from the year I was born here, and there are some of them talking about the Sputnik somewhere. So yeah, it's part of this idea of looking to the past in order to work for the future. The other thing is that we found that in this building was working Vladimir Shukhov during 20 years. You know, Vladimir Shukhov was born only 1 year later than Gaudí, so they are kind of very contemporary. Gaudí was working with traditional materials like stone and steel, but Shukhov, because he was an engineer, he did many projects. We were in Baku with Nadia some days ago. He made the first oleoduct in the Soviet area in Baku because they were extracting oil. It seems that this building, they have the first central heating in Moscow, and it was done by Shukhov. We have a pipe here. We hope that will not explode, but it seems that maybe from that moment. And he was working for 20 years for a company, and this building was the headquarters of the company. So when we discovered that, and trying to follow this tradition of mixing engineering, like Greg Lynn a little bit, doing structures like the Shukhov Tower, you know, it was a telecommunication tower, but he was doing many other towers for water and other systems. He inspired people like Buckminster Fuller and Norman Foster, by the way. So that's why we decided to name this laboratory that is oriented to city technology innovation with his name. And his grandson gave the permission to do it. So our idea is that this is a place where students can live here, can work here. So the students from the summer program right now, they are working all time here. It's an open place where we like to mix electronics, but you saw other projects we did before. So we did projects related with architecture, with housing. I myself was doing the project of a city like Barcelona, acting as chief architect and doing many projects at many scales. And from our point of view, the education of the future should be oriented to mix knowledge. So the doctor of the future should know computation and biotechnology, because the way they will take care about the people will not be only cutting, but it will be using even robotics in order to operate the people, sometimes in from the remote point of view. So that's why what we propose is that we should mix the knowledge about cities from any scale, the knowledge about technologies, about electronics, fabrication, etc., but also the social science knowledge related with demography, with sociology, with geography, etc. So we want to mix these three different knowledge, and what we want to learn it by doing projects. So this program will be very much on learning by doing. It will be very much on experimenting things. If you want to prove that the mobility in Moscow is not great, you should get the data from somewhere, or you should invent a sensor. You should fabricate the sensor somewhere here and go to the street and test it. So that's why I say the people from the summer program, if you are going to do something, you need the last day, you need to go to the street, you need to install there, and you need to test with real people doing some videos, etc. The other interesting thing, and I learned from my son, I have a son, he's 19 years old, and in general he's a filmmaker, and he learned how to make video by his own. He went to internet, he went to YouTube, and he learns many different things. So this diagram shows that if you want to draw as an architect, you have tools like Rhino, or you want to use photography, you have Photoshop. But then you have other tools like to deal with energy, or to deal with big data, or to do with programming, or to deal with demographics. And there are software related with this. And what we want to do is that our students will be able to learn everything. They should be able to learn, or at least to start to learn, how to use all these different matters, all these different softwares, because then they will be able to, whenever they have a project in the future, they will be able to know what they should be using in order to do what. But also, when they are talking with another specialist, at least they will have a basic background and language that they will be able to understand each other. The biggest problem today in cities is that cities are organized by silos, and the engineers do the traffic, architects do the buildings, biologists do the parks, and IT guys, they do the IT thing. But in general, they don't talk between each other, they don't learn, they don't understand each other, they don't trust each other, and that's why it's very difficult that we design the same city, because there are many different layers and everyone is trying to do their best, but in their own silo. So what we want to do is to break silos and to let people understand architecture, learn engineering, sociology, geography, in order to have an overall view of what means to design and to build cities. The program, in fact, it will be 2 years master program. The accreditation, you know that in Russia, the accreditation system to be an urbanist or an urban planner was developed in the Higher School of Economics. So that means that the people that finish this master will have the accreditation to be an urban planner, and he will be able to develop such a thing. But the important thing is that he will know many more things than a traditional urban planner. And that's why we organize the 4 semesters with 5 different layers. People will learning everything about technology that we can teach them. People will be doing projects. People will be learn management, that means economics, laws, etc. People will be learning culture, what is fundamental, and people will be learning about information, data, etc. At the end of the second semester, we'll have a research trip. The first trip we'll be we call the Trans-Siberian City, because we want to work on designing cities from scratch, and we are planning to do a trip with the Trans-Siberian from Moscow to Vladivostok, and then to use the trip as a moment to work together, and then we'll be finishing the project there in Vladivostok. We'll do it if there is not a war with North Korea, etc. So we will take care about this. But anyhow, this is a fantastic place where many things will happen in the future when there will be a little bit more of peace. In the second year, we'll have the third semester will be another semester, but then in the second semester there will be a graduation project that the people need to do. There will be an internship working with companies, and then we'll have also the possibility that will be an extra that some students will be able to do, to have a double accreditation with IAC. They need to spend 1 month in Barcelona in Valldaura Labs, where John was located, proving that what they learned was part of the general knowledge that we agree that future urban planners connected with technology should know. Here there is a description of the 12 basic different layers of knowledge, because people will be working with the first semester. People will developing technology mostly for interior spaces, developing objects. In the second semester they will be developing technology related with buildings and streets, and in the third semester they will be developing technology related with cities and communities. About technologies, they will be dealing also the first semester fabricating things like other people in the Fab Lab network are doing. In the second semester, we'll be dealing with technology related with energy and with the flows of water and other things. And in the third semester, we'll be dealing with technologies that can be applied more at the scale of the city level. About information, we want the people that being able to make pictures, to make videos, but in the proper way, looking to the reality, analyzing what they see, and then trying to being able to communicate what they are understanding from the society. We'll be having a strong program on reading books and discussing books as part of the education, and also we'll be dealing with management of the projects, because one of the big problems in cities is that people that make projects doesn't know how to manage in order to make it real. We'll be dealing also with big data. There are many good people here in Russia dealing with big data. We'll be learning the history of the future of urbanism, how people were thinking in a radical way to the future, and people will be making their own proposal about the future, because every course will have a part of analysis but another part of propositions, and then we'll be dealing with economy and the impact analysis. We'll be trying to learn from one city to the others. We had a meeting like 3 hours ago with people from Bishkek, and we were with Nadia in Baku. So every city has their own specificity, but at the same time cities can learn from each other, and we want to develop a methodology that wherever you go to another city in Russia or in China or other places, you are able to understand fast in which status of development they are and which kind of projects they should be developing. We'll be dealing also with new business models, because we are interested on whenever you have an idea, which is the business model that can be behind of that. And then we'll have, as I said before, this period in Barcelona, and this is the project for the Trans-Siberian city, that again, you see in this place of the world, from my point of view, this is the San Francisco of the 21st century, because it's not very much, there are not many people living here, but here you see the north of China, the natural harbor is Vladivostok, you have all Korea here. The problem is North Korea, but the day that these two countries will be the same, this will be another world power, and then you have Japan. So this is a region with an big importance, and maybe new forms of urbanities can be developed here. There are some professors that are located here. So what we did was to hire young and middle local professors, Russian, that are able to understand the culture, but then to be working here in a daily basis. And we'll have people, you see Greg Lin and others that will be coming here to organize workshops and to do projects and to consult us, and they will be welcoming us if we do some other trips to different parts of the world. Carlo Ratti is at MIT, Greg Lin is at LA, Xavier de Casteller used to work for Foster, now is working for Hassel. They are originally from Australia. Roger van de Heider, he is one of the best light designers in the world. So that's all. We are launching the program, and we'll start next September. There are some people already registered. We are having some agreements with other people, and we are more than interested that having local people, talented people that want to learn not only design and production, etc., but to have an holistic vision about how to make cities, and people that has a strong commitment on bringing those ideas to the reality, doing prototypes, and after that trying to develop real economy and real projects based in radical innovation. This is what I wanted to say. And now I am open to questions or comments or Maybe anyone has any question? Yeah, part of what we are doing when we talk about the future, we don't know how far is the future. Well, this is a prototype was done by Lena and Ivan, connecting sensors with facades, and that's why there are some prototypes somewhere here, everything produced here in the lab. And now we are launching a competition called Cities for a Flying Wall, because this idea that Greg was discussing and what we were talking, this is something is going to happen, and we want, maybe this is a 15 years future, it's not tomorrow, but it's something is going to happen. For example, this flying bike is a real picture of someone from Moscow in one factory. So the truth is that this is an old factory. Don't remember the name. What is the name of that factory? In the, what is the Fab Lab, the HSE Fab Lab?
Technopark, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's in the Technopark. It's an old factory of cars that now there are many, there is a factory doing chips there, I have seen that, and also they are flying these kind of things. So there are people working here. What I say about flying things is not a joke. I think that this is something here in Russia could happen, and that's why we are launching this competition. There are many international jurors here, like Greg, Vinny Mas, and the chief architect of Moscow, that should be today here, but he's not coming, Alexei, and many other people. So this is a free, it's a competition just to generate discussion and to generate ideas, free registration, and you can apply until October 16, doing some drawings and some text. Rodion is the coordinator for the competition. And that's all.
I have a question. I have a question about this contest. Okay, you ask just graphic materials, but I'm urbanist and I have already research, text research about flight transport, about dirigibles. It's like the dirigible. Okay. Zeppelins, yes. But I'm not a designer. I'm not an architect. I can't draw something. I can't make a maquette. Okay, but I have a text research. Can I do something?
Yeah, you can do something. In the regulations say that you need to deliver 3A3 or something like this in PDF format. So you can look for a friend or a girl or friend. Sorry, you can look for someone that can partner with you in order to generate some visual content, or you can just apply by writing some text and doing some other or something like this. But we love people that have some ideas, so you should try. So that's the other interesting thing, and this is what we do here. What we try is to find people, okay, this is too much good sample. Lena being a great architect, Ivan being a great engineer, they work together and they are able to do interactive facades. So what you need to do if you are not good in drawing is looking for someone that is good in drawing and helping you. Maybe he's good in drawing and he's not good in thinking too much. So let's say that looking for partnership to do things is always good. Yes.
And I wanted to ask about the whole information of the competition. Is this on the website? Yeah?
So, I told you, today I was at this job and I am doing future cities.
Yeah, please, whenever you're speaking, please speak into the microphone, because there is an online video happening right now and they won't hear anything if you're without microphone. Thanks. Yeah, it's futurecitiescontest.org.
Yes.
And the registration?
Registration is
Yeah.
here. Registration. There is a web page, you register, it's free registration. Right now there are like... Hello, I am here back. There are around 65 registrations from 25 countries, so then will be like 200 registrations. But then, in general, what we'll do will be, we will select the best, we'll do an exhibition here, we will publish something, and the winners will win some economical award. Okay, so the interesting thing, to win is okay, but to participate is also good because it's a good moment to discuss and to be part of a broader discussion.
Thank you.
Good. More questions?
Yeah, I think there is a question from this girl from Nizhny Novgorod. She was asking me yesterday.
From who?
What? Yeah, go ahead.
What? Sorry? I am a friend of Ivan, and so I have a difficult question. I'm participating in Moscow Urban Forum now, and I was cheating a little because in Moscow Urban Forum we have a question: what is the future of house? What type of house will be in future in 20 years? I asking Ivan, can you please help me a little? How do you think is in future? We will live in the house or in in something else, probably in the capsule, or we won't live, we will fly, we will traveling. And Ivan say like I'm busy and something else. And so that's my question: what is the future of not of the city? What is the future of house? How any idea how we will live in 20 years? Thank you.
I have some ideas, yes. I explained many times that I was very much inspired by the Soviet housing. In fact, Narcomfin was an interesting project. In fact, today I was showing some videos, and maybe I can show, let me see. So, first of all, videos, incredible, it works. So, one interesting topic is that, I mean, a house is the place where you have, what is a house for you?
It is a place.
It's a place?
The house.
Where you have what? Your kitchen, your clothes, your bed?
You have walls and something between the walls.
Yeah, but if I could ask you, tell me one thing that makes your house, what will be that house?
Actually, I'm trying to make a question because probably the house is not a place where I'm sleeping, not a place where I'm eating. Because I can sleep in the hotel, I can only have my things, the useless thing in my house, and I can travel. What is a house?
Perfect. So I was asking that question, and then we did a research some years ago, trying to see which were the basic functions that people must develop in a house. And then we found that there were 13 basic functions like sleeping, storing things, cleaning, eating, resting, and even working. and that's why we produce objects, and we have objects in a house because those objects allow us to make functions. Some of them are part of the house, normally the kitchen or the toilet, and some of them we put there. We were also analyzing some studies about which is the minimum surface that every person should have. And then this is a video like 12 or 13 years ago, because there was a big debate in Spain because young people start to live alone, and they were discussing if we should be producing small apartments. So the idea was, if we have 25 meters apartments, then everyone need to have everything that we say is the minimum thing you need to have a house. But then we start to discuss going or connecting or upgrading the Soviet model using the share economy. Today we call it share economy to Napster, Uber and others. What will happen if people will be able to have their private space for their basic things, and then the shared space for other things that they are not so basic? So to share a bed is maybe not great, sometimes yes, sometimes not, but to share a toilet maybe it's okay, and to share a table. So we were trying also to see the interaction or the possibility to mix different objects together. For example, in your toilet, normally you don't have your fridge and your bed, because we have already organized these basic functions in specific spaces like kitchen, etc., etc. So we were doing this research about thinking how we'll apply the idea of living in following what we were looking that was happening, that was this kind of share economy. So there is that video. The interesting thing is that after to make a video, what we do is a project, and after to do a project, and if we can, is to build it. And this is exactly what we did here. We did a project in this case in Spain, where the idea was to have people should have individual apartments, and then they could have a sharing space in front of their house, and then they could have even a bigger sharing space for all the buildings. So if we have 100 persons, the people could have like different configurations. So we built this place where everyone had, this is a Spanish law, a kitchen and a toilet, etc. But this was the sharing living area. So that means at this point, many young people rent apartments, and they share or they sub-rent their apartment to other young people. And in general, we never design buildings to be shared. So that's why here what we did was to work. This is a kind of upgrade to not confine, but instead to be communist. This is a sharing mode, because what sharing means that the people in a free way, they decide to live together and they decide to share space. This is mostly oriented for young people. Another interesting thing is that when people are sharing things, they meet each other, and suddenly they discover, oh, you play guitar, I hide my drums here, we can make a band. And this building has 3 bands. It's true, young people, they play instruments, and they discover they can live together. So this is the plan where you see from the staircase they go to the big living room, and from the big living room they go to the independent apartments. There are like different configurations. This is one study that we did, and there is another study we did in one project we did at IAC about thinking on the self-sufficient neighborhood. And then in this self-sufficient neighborhood, we were calculating, this was a neighborhood for 25,000 persons, and then we were calculating how many different typologies of housing we could have. Because what is my housing in Moscow? Hotels. And then that means that for me, housing is a place where I can sleep, and I like very much to change my house every time I come to Moscow. this is, and with people traveling, that they maybe spend 10% of their time traveling, they are using Airbnb, and again their house is a temporary house. And now there are people starting to design apartments, houses, with some room to be re-rent for the Airbnb. So normally parents used to have a kid and they used to have an apartment. Now they are having a virtual apartment. So more and more we are establishing relationship of families that are not blood connected, but are more like social connected because they live together, etc. So what is fundamental also is to understand the unit of the family, and there are like different units of family, like one person living alone, two person living alone, and then based on the I used to live with five. We are five brothers. So I used to live in a country they used to promote to have many kids, and now families has less kids. No, so that means that the apartment maybe should be smaller. And based on that, look at this. No, and there are single families or families with people with the same sex that even they have a kid, etc. So let's say that the social background and the analysis of this is fundamental in order to define how the people should live. And based on that, don't make pictures, I will share with you, don't worry. So this is the idea of how people live together, and and then in a neighborhood of 25,000 people, we were defining like different forms, including hotels, Airbnb, apartments, etc. So let's say that the idea of the traditional family really is dissolving in the modern society. We are divorcing more. We are having like different configurations. We invite friends to here, we rent apartments, and that means that the typology for housing should be thought in a more flexible way. That's a long answer, but this is an answer that I knew the answer.
Can I have a question continuing your talk? And did you study the socioeconomic, the economic mixture? Or like in Moscow, you have this Western, for example, region when you have very poor people and very rich living very close.
Well, I didn't study in Moscow, but I study very much in Barcelona, and there are some neighborhoods that the cities, there is a study in London, very interesting, that say that if you take one line and you start in one metro stop and you are moving every time you change the metro stop, the life expectancy is reducing 1 year. And then the difference between some neighborhoods and others are maybe 7 or 8 years. And also about the income, there are some areas where in Barcelona that we are quite equal. The difference of income sometimes can be 1 to 5. In Singapore or in New York can be 1 to 25. So let's say that this inequality is a fundamental question to be solved, because if there are different ways to approach this inequality. Places that has a lot of immigration, for example in France, the inequality is huge, and if they are not good on promoting the social integration, what you have is France. You have La Banlieue, where the people that came from Africa, they think that they are living alone, they live in a different country, although they play in the national football team, at the end they are not very well integrated, you know. And then this is something you need to deal with policies, and there are some countries like, for example, the Netherlands, where the public housing program is huge, and then with social public housing program, you really can deal on moving people, placing social housing in rich areas. Another place that, by incredible, has a huge social public housing program is New York, because the Department of Social Housing was created in the 70s, because this was the super crisis of the economy with the oil crisis, and then the people start to lose their apartment, they start to burn it, and then there was really a big problem. So they create a huge program on that, and today in some places in New York, when they make towers for rich people, they need to build 10% of apartments for affordable housing. So they are mixing in the same building affordable housing with super free market and rich people. So this is a question I didn't study in Moscow yet. We hope we'll have time to study these kind of things, but this is a problem. It's happening in Brazil. It's a disaster. So there are places that in Singapore, 90% of the housing is social housing. It's owned by the government. So Singapore is a kind of liberal dictatorship where they are doing this kind of dictatorship by doing things like this, like making houses and giving for very low price to everyone as a good way to ensure that a basic, let's say, background for everyone. One last question. Nadia, say something.
I think that was a great format today of inviting people from different parts of the world. That was really great, and this creates the ambience that we are connected together. So here in Moscow today, and I hope we can continue it in our program in the course of our competition, and to make such an event one more time in the future, and to continue doing it. So that would be great.
Great. So thank you for coming. Bye.